Pigs gone wild. Researchers found that Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire country.
Texas has spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to stop them. Helicopters, thermal scopes, phone-triggered traps, bait fermented until it reeks. And the super pigs just keep winning, breeding faster than any weapon can kill them.
But they're aggressive as heck, make a mess wherever they go. And worst of all, their population is growing exponentially.
But half a world away, in a place with many times as many of these animals, the tide is quietly turning. Not because anyone built a smarter machine, because something out there hunts these pigs for free, every single night, and never once stops. No pay, no orders, no budget. And it's the last thing you'd ever expect. So what is it? Pigs gone wild. Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire United States. Not one of the worst. The worst. Researchers estimate that wild pigs tear through more than $1.6 billion in crops across the country every year, and Texas alone shoulders $871 million of that, the highest figure of any state in the nation. Here's the part that feels almost unfair. A single sow can produce up to 2 litters a year, each carrying up to 10 piglets. Run that across a population, and in as little as 4 months, their numbers can double. Texas farmers have tried nearly everything. They dig deep trenches. They scatter fermented corn bait for a week to lure an entire group into one trap. They hire hunters to shoot from helicopters, thermal scopes turning the pitch black of night into something readable. The federal government has removed more than 500,000 hogs in 7 years. And the wild pigs are still there, still more numerous, still causing more damage than the year before. So, this video does something different. We'll find where this fight is easier, figure out why, and answer the question almost nobody in Texas asks out loud. The real numbers. Before any solution, you need to feel the true weight of this. According to Texas Wildlife Services, the state is home to roughly 2.6 million wild pigs, a number climbing sharply in just a few years. They live in nearly every county from fertile eastern plains out to dry western regions once thought too harsh for them. And the damage isn't abstract. According to the latest survey from the Texas Farm Bureau and the American Farm Bureau Federation, Texas records $871 million in damage a year, the highest among the 13 states studied. Zoom out to the country, and the figure lands somewhere between $1.5 and $1.6 billion, with a wild pig population estimated at 5 to 6 million, spread across more than 35 states. The way they wreck a field is brutally simple. With a snout built for rooting out roots and insects, a wild pig tears up patch after patch of soil, turning a field of corn or peanuts into a wasteland overnight. Those two get hit hardest, not because pigs crave them, but because they're the most common crops across the land these animals roam. Now, the detail that makes it feel hopeless. Texas, like most of modern America, no longer has a single natural predator strong enough to keep these pigs in check. The wolves and mountain lions that once played that role were driven out of nearly every farming region centuries ago. There's a line from Billy Heigen-Botham, an expert at Texas A&M, that people in the industry repeat all the time. There are 2 kinds of landowners in Texas, the ones who already have feral hogs, and the ones who are about to. Every weapon tried. Facing an enemy with no natural predator, Texas farmers have reached for nearly every weapon imaginable. Each carries the same hidden flaw. Start with the oldest, digging trenches. It rests on real biology. Wild pigs have low, heavy bodies, not built to jump straight up the way a deer can, so a trench 3 to 5 feet deep is often enough to stop them crossing without a running start. But the flaw shows instantly. A trench only blocks entry. It doesn't remove even one of the millions of hogs inside Texas. It shoves the damage onto the neighbor who didn't dig. Then the fermented bait and remote-controlled trap, the most patient method of all. Farmers mix corn with sugar and yeast, letting it ferment for days until it gives off a stench almost irresistible to a wild pig. They lay it out for weeks without springing anything, letting the entire group, piglets to lead sow, grow comfortable with the spot. Only when the whole family is inside do they drop the gate. But the patience it demands borders on unreasonable, weeks of watching camera feeds. And if you trigger it a moment too early and let one pig escape, the rest learn the trap is dangerous and never come back. Quick thing before we get to the fix. If you're the kind of person who finds this stuff fascinating, this quiet tug of war between people and the wild things we can't quite control, do me a favor and subscribe to World Enigma. It genuinely keeps these videos coming. Alright, back to the pigs. Next, the most expensive option, and one of the most popular, professional hunters with thermal scopes firing from helicopters. In a Texas A&M survey, around 70% of landowners said they'd allow it on their property. With military-grade optics, a hunter can spot a group of pigs glowing against a black field from more than 400 yards out. The results are instant, but tiny, one ranch on one night, nowhere near enough to keep pace with millions across an entire state. And finally, the most organized effort ever: coordinated federal programs. The USDA launched its National Feral Swine Damage Management Program in 2014. Since then, it has removed more than 570,000 wild pigs, wiped out populations in 5 states, and helped 18 more reduce the worst of the damage. Between 2014 and 2021, it's estimated to have protected as much as $40 billion in agricultural and ecological value, the largest success figure any such effort has ever produced. But it only holds while the money keeps flowing and coordination between federal agencies, states, and thousands of private landowners survives. Cut the funding and the pigs bounce right back. 4 approaches: physical, chemical, firepower, and full-scale organization. Each one works to a degree, but side by side, they paint the same picture. Humans have nearly emptied the toolbox, and the pigs are still winning. To understand why, stop looking at the weapons and look at the animal. The math problem. The reason none of it works isn't about trenches or traps. It's arithmetic. A female wild pig can start breeding as early as 6 to 8 months old, when many large mammals haven't even left their mothers. Each year, she produces 1 to 2 litters, 4 to 10 piglets each. On average, 8 to 12 new animals a year. Under good conditions, plenty of food, little hunting pressure, a population can grow by as much as 80 to 86% in a single year. Early breeding, litters stacked on litters, and raw adaptability to thrive from swamp to desert. That is what earns these hogs the name super pigs, one of the fastest multiplying large mammals in North America. Because of that rate, experts have landed on a threshold they informally call the 70% rule. To simply stop a wild pig population from growing, you have to remove at least 70% of the entire population every single year. Not 50, not 60, 70. Drop even slightly below that line, and the survivors rebuild the whole thing to full size within months. Picture that at the scale of Texas. With 2.6 million pigs on the ground, just to hold the number steady, never mind shrink it, you'd need to remove close to 1.8 million hogs a year, every year, without stopping. There is no single tool on Earth, no trench, no trap, no helicopter, no federal program that can carry that load by itself forever. One more thing makes it feel impossible. Across most of the modern United States, there's no longer any natural predator capable of this job. Gray wolves and mountain lions, the wild pig's main natural enemies, were hunted to near extinction in farming countries centuries ago to protect livestock. So, now Texans play apex predator themselves, with guns, traps, and helicopters, doing for free what a balanced ecosystem once handled every night, with nobody watching. Which raises the real question: is there anywhere fighting an easier version of this exact battle? The answer sits on a continent most people would never guess. Meet Australia. If Texas thinks it's in a crisis, look at Australia. The wild pig population there is estimated between 13.5 and 24 million animals, many times the size of the entire American one. They occupy roughly 40 to 45% of the continent, from tropical wetlands up north to dry desert creek beds inland. Direct agricultural damage runs to more than 100 million Australian dollars a year. And according to Dr. Heather Channon, who coordinates the country's National Feral Pig Management Program, even that is only the tip of the iceberg. One long-term study adding up cumulative damage, from 1960 to today, lands on a staggering range, from hundreds of millions to several billion dollars, depending how you count. And just like in Texas, Australia's pig population can explode by 85 to 86% a year if nothing stops it. That's no coincidence. The two stories share the same root: Australia's wild pigs descend from domestic pigs brought over on the first fleet in 1788 to feed the young colony at Sydney. America's wild pigs trace back to livestock from Spanish expeditions in the 15th and 16th centuries. Both are descendants of abandoned farm animals that went feral and became one of the most destructive invasive species humans have ever accidentally unleashed. Australian farmers don't have it easier on paper. They lay bait, build enormous traps, hire helicopter shooters for land no road can reach. No magic wand exempts them either. But there's one quiet difference. One ecological thread, weighed against everything else, simply missing in Texas. And it's the reason the tide, across parts of Australia, is actually starting to turn. The silent hunter. The creature I hinted at back at the start is the dingo. It's Australia's largest land-dwelling carnivore, and across most of its range it sits atop the food chain, where no other animal poses a real threat to it. That position makes the dingo one of nature's most effective regulators, quietly keeping kangaroo numbers in check along with invasive species like wild pigs and feral rabbits. But the way a dingo hunts a wild pig isn't the dramatic showdown you might imagine. It's an opportunist, always going for the easiest prey within reach. In country full of kangaroos and pigs, it hunts those rather than risk livestock, which humans guard heavily. Its favorite targets are piglets and juveniles, too young to fight back. A full-grown pig, especially a tusked male, is dangerous even for a lone dingo. So dingoes hunt alone or in pairs for small prey and band into packs of 2 to 12 for anything bigger. Most of it happens at dawn, dusk, or the dead of night, which is exactly why, for years, almost nobody had seen it happen, until a camera did. Caught on camera. Picture the field team for the Australian Wildlife Conservancy, one of the country's leading conservation groups, parked in remote country near the Gulf of Carpentaria in the Northern Territory, watching a feed come in. By their own account, what they caught had never been filmed this clearly before. A single dingo trails an entire group of wild pigs across open grassland, unbothered by the odds. It doesn't lunge at the biggest pig or the closest one. It patiently isolates the smallest, weakest animal and brings it down, with zero human help. But that single hunt isn't the point. The point is the machine running behind it every night across the whole continent. Dingoes don't wipe out pigs the way people try to. No campaign to erase entire groups, no annual quota. Instead, they grind down the survival rate of piglets, precisely the number that drives that terrifying breeding rate. Every piglet a dingo catches is one animal that will never grow up, never reproduce, never add to that 85% growth. And this pressure costs no government a dollar, no equipment, no camera feeds to babysit. It happens naturally every night, everywhere. And if that sounds too good to be true, Australia already ran the experiment to prove it, completely by accident. The fence experiment. Between 1880 and 1885, to protect their sheep country from dingoes, Australians built the dingo fence, the longest animal barrier ever constructed, stretching roughly 3,488 miles across the continent. Inside the fence, where dingoes were almost completely wiped out to protect the flocks, ecologists watched something unintended unfold. Feral cats and foxes, two other introduced predators, exploded in number, no longer hunted or chased off by dingoes. At the same time, kangaroo populations surged with no predator to check them, leading to overgrazing and stripped, degraded land. Outside the fence, where dingoes still lived as part of the ecosystem, the cats, foxes, and kangaroos all stayed at far more balanced levels. Without meaning to, Australians ran a century-long experiment and proved something no piece of Texas technology ever could. A native apex predator does a job no gun, trap, or thermal scope can replace, which points straight to an obvious idea, and the exact reason it would blow up in Texas's face. Why not Texas? If dingoes are this effective, why doesn't Texas just bring some over? The answer, far more dangerous than it sounds. First, the dingo is itself an introduced species. It's believed to have reached Australia somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 years ago, maybe earlier. And ecological history shows again and again that moving an animal from one continent to a completely different one, however good your intentions, can turn a solution into a brand new catastrophe. The classic case is the cane toad. brought into Australia to fight beetles eating sugarcane, only to become one of the most destructive invaders the continent has ever seen. Second, and this is the big one, dingoes don't only hunt pigs, they hunt sheep, goats, and young calves. That's the whole reason Australians built that fence, not to keep pigs out, but to protect sheep from the very animal we've been praising. And Texas runs one of the largest cattle, sheep, and goat industries in the country. Bringing in dingoes would just trade one problem for another, possibly a costlier one. Third, the legal wall. U.S. law on importing exotic wildlife is already extremely strict because so many past introductions spiraled out of control. And fourth, there's a deeper ecological catch. The dingo took thousands of years to fine-tune itself to Australia's climate, terrain, and prey. Drop it into a place as different as Texas, and there's no guarantee it behaves anything like it does in that footage. So, what's the real answer for Texas? Probably not lifting an animal wholesale from another continent. A more realistic path might live in America's own history, the careful, controlled return of the native predators that used to be here, gray wolves and mountain lions. And that road comes loaded with its own fierce controversy. What nature knew. Put the two pictures side by side. In Texas, humans carry the weight of apex predator alone. Thermal cameras, phone-triggered traps, helicopters, professional hunters. All of it expensive, all of it needing constant human hands, and all of it combined has only ever held the pigs back, never beaten them. In Australia, farmers fight with nearly the same tools and still lose hundreds of millions of dollars a year. No magic there either. But there's one extra layer of defense that costs them nothing to run. A native predator quietly doing its job every night, with no orders and no budget. Let me be clear, the dingo is not a magic fix. Australia still bleeds money to wild pigs every year. And the dingo itself is hunted, trapped, and poisoned across much of the country because of its conflict with the livestock industry, treated in a bitter irony a lot like the pigs are. So, the real lesson was never bring dingoes to Texas. It runs deeper than that. In any ecosystem, a native predator that evolved alongside the land over thousands of years plays a role that no technology, however advanced, can ever fully replace. When humans pull a link out of the food chain, the cost doesn't vanish. It just changes shape, from a quiet evening of a wolf out on the plains into hundreds of millions of dollars a year, spent redoing that same work with machines. From the cornfields of Texas torn up every night to a fence running thousands of miles across Australia, this story was never really about pigs. It's about an ecosystem knocked out of balance centuries ago, when people removed the predators to protect their livestock and left themselves doing the job nature once did for free. And the unsettling part is that the pigs aren't really the problem. They're the receipt, the bill for a decision made long before any of us were here, still coming due every single year. So, here's my question for you. If the decision were yours, would you keep pouring money into technology year after year, or take the risk of restoring a predator that vanished long ago? Tell me in the comments. I read them. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. If you got something out of this, hit like and subscribe to World Enigma. It truly helps me keep making videos like this one. I'll see you in the next one.